What is up, guys? I am outraged, episode 12. Whew, it's a long weekend, right? It's a 3-day weekend, Memorial Day weekend. I know some of you guys are working, so I appreciate you guys for tuning into this whenever you get an opportunity. I was fortunate enough to have this weekend off. Oftentimes with what I do, I am working weekends, and it sucks. I don't like working weekends. I like being home with the family. I like having my free time. I like filling my free time when I have it with things to do. And a lot of you guys recently saw that we started the first I'm Outraged patron-only league. And these are huge leagues. It's a very crazy format. It is a 16-team, super flex, tight end premium, quarterback efficiency boost for I think it's 1 point for every 20 yards versus a typical 25. It's only -1 for interceptions. There's first downs built into it. So there's a lot of unique scoring in it. And it is 24 rounds long. I'm not a mathematician. I'm pretty good at math, though, but I'm going to pull out a calculator for this. 16 teams times 24 rounds. That's 384 players. Let that sink in. That's 384 players. It is start 2 tight end, start 3 wide receiver, start 2 running backs. Of course, you've got to start 1 quarterback. You have a super flex position. You have 3 additional flex positions on top of that. It's maniacal. It's one of the crazier formats I've been a part of, and I was invited to join a league by one of our patrons, and I jumped into it and I enjoyed the format and what is going on so much that I thought, why don't we replicate this and make it the I'm Outraged patron leagues? I like big leagues. Look, I can appreciate an 8-man league and a 10-man league, but I've only really ever played in 12 and larger. And 12 is fine. 14 is better. And 16 is amazing. I mean, here's what I love about it. 1, positional scarcity is going to take place depending on how you construct your drafts, whether you have hits, whether you don't, and you have to make trades. I love the idea that I have 15 other owners that I can work with, build relationships with, understand, build strategy against, and work with in the future. And how much more valuable is a 101 in a 16-team league than an 8-man league? I mean, think about it. If you're the last pick in an 8-man league, that's only 7 picks later. If you're the last pick in a 16-team league, that's 15 picks later. That's incredible. I mean, who the hell is even there that many picks later? So the value of all these things changes. And I've watched so many strategies. One of these leagues that I'm in, and I'm in 3 now because we are currently starting the second I'm Outraged 16-team Dynasty League. You will find the link available as you're listening to this. We have over 130 patrons, so if we spill over into a 3rd league, we'll make a 3rd league. And I will be in every one of those leagues. So come take me on. Come challenge me in Dynasty. This is your chance. You're a patron of the podcast and the project, and I appreciate every one of you guys. You're helping me do something that I really love to do and love to share with you guys. And I hope you feel like you're getting equal value back for what you're putting into this. But with that being said, I would love you guys to come take me on in a Dynasty League head-to-head. Let's do this. I love this format. It was brought to me, I believe it's Chris Largy. I think that's how you say his name. I probably screwed that up. I apologize. He has been the man. He has been so helpful on this, getting it off the ground. He's helped set up the league safes. He's helped set up the leagues. He's very knowledgeable about this. It's moving incredibly efficiently. And these leagues are a blast. It's a $50 buy-in, of course, and it's annual. And it looks like the payout is being discussed right now. It looks like there's a first-place payout, a second-place payout, and then the highest points scored of the playoff teams. I got to look at this. Again, I got to go look at that, so I shouldn't even say it. Go check them out. If the second league is full, by the time you're listening to this and we have enough people, we'll make a 3rd league. Let's do it. I'm down. I'll play in as many leagues as it takes to make sure that every patron has a league to play in. No patron left behind, okay? All you guys, we're going to do this. I look forward to it. I hope we can play. These drafts are absolutely insane. as I was going to get to, in one of the leagues, a guy took quarterback 5 rounds in a row. He can only start 2. He can only start 2, and I understand that he is trying to create a artificial, positional scarcity. He's trying to corner the market. He had quite a few decent quarterbacks, but it's very interesting to see how people choose to play in these formats. And one of the quarterbacks that he drafted was Drew Lock. And this started this whole deep dive for me as I was looking into this, the selection of Drew Lock and what does Drew Lock mean and where did he take him? And I've had questions about Drew Lock myself ever since he entered the league. And I sat back this weekend as I've had my free time and I did a bunch of yard work, which I didn't want to do. I'm sure many of you guys had to do yard work. We have people that were repainting houses. I mean, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't want to do anything on the weekend at all. And today is Monday. As I'm recording this, I typically record these on Monday so that you guys can have them on Tuesday. But here I was on Sunday doing yard work with my wife, carrying the team on my back. For every shovel full of gravel that she put down, I put down 6. Typical. I told her, I said, I need 2 of me. It's fine. I appreciate that she helped, though. I appreciate that she helped. But I'm out there, and at one moment, I got my shovel, and I'm on like the 500th shovel full of gravel. And I'm thinking to myself, why did that guy take Drew Lock as early as he took Drew Lock? Does he know something that I don't know? Because I've got a sense that Denver, this Broncos organization, is changing. And it's not changing the way that I think many people believe it is changing, because I believe that Denver is a future veteran landing spot. And I don't think we're that far away from a future veteran actually landing there. And, because I've been the one that's been beating the drum that Courtland Sutton was hurt the most post-draft from the assets. And honestly, that's hard to debate, right? Many of us have talked about other players going to other spots, but it's hard to believe that anybody was hurt more than Courtland Sutton was with the addition of the players that John Elway added to this organization. And this is a Denver Broncos team that finished number 27 in pass attempts in 2019 and arguably has one of the most questionable quarterback situations in the league. Because truthfully, none of us know what to expect from second-round pick Drew Lock. I don't. This guy selected Drew Lock. Clearly, he knows more than I do where he took him in a 16-team league where you don't want to make a mistake early on because you will get burned if you do. You will literally pay for it for a while. Think about this. Your early picks in these leagues, top 3 rounds, if you select the wrong player, you are just dust. It's hard to make that up in a startup, especially. This is your one shot. And I don't know anything about Drew Lock going forward. He could be great, but odds are he's going to stink. And truthfully, that shouldn't shock anyone. It doesn't shock me. I'm sure you hearing it from my lips, tumbling onto your ears, it doesn't shock you either. Because this notion 100% aligns with the historical success rate of second-round drafted NFL rookies at the quarterback position specifically. Because since 1936, there have been 26 second-round drafted quarterbacks. I know that seems crazy. The first, one of them, is a Hall of Famer. 3 of them were serviceable starters. And 22 of the other players had 55 or less NFL starts throughout their career. And most of those 22 players had 35 or less starts in their career. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. That's just a smidge over 2 years. That's nothing. You don't draft a guy in a startup league with the idea that you're going to have this guy for just 2 years. Because if a player only makes it 2 years, that means that year 1, he was just good enough to get himself an opportunity in year 2, and year 2 he stunk, or year 2 he got hurt. That's not the guy that you take early in a monster super flex league. But regardless, this is for all leagues we're talking about. Because when we look at the quarterbacks that were taken over the second round in this giant gap of years, the Hall of Famer is Drew Brees. Drew Brees is the best second-round quarterback ever selected in the universe. In the history of the game, 100 years from now, when we look back on all the second-round drafted quarterbacks, Drew Brees will still be the number 1. It's incredibly hard to debate. I can't imagine anybody stepping in and doing what he has done throughout his career. The guy's a legend. He's still a legend as a 41-year-old quarterback in the league. And then the serviceable quarterbacks, Andy Dalton, Derek Carr, Jake Plummer, right? People remember Jake Plummer. Those are the serviceable quarterbacks. The guys that have been, they're okay. I drafted Derek Carr in one of the leagues recently. Of course, now I have to back him up with Marcus Mariota because I don't know. Maybe Derek Carr has a couple bad games this year and suddenly they're questioning what they're doing and there's no identity there. What happens next? I don't know. So these are the guys that you try to avoid, but inevitably you have to select quarterbacks at some point. And I took them late. And then you have a couple of the other names that are sitting there at the top. You have Colin Kaepernick, who of course ascended like a shooting star at one point, right? That guy he came out like gangbusters and everybody thought, here we go. This guy's unstoppable. As a Seattle fan, I remember him being impossible to stop. But his career, the way it faded out, the unfortunate nature of it, left him as a statistical casualty, similar to many of these other players. And then the other second-round pick is Jimmy Garoppolo, who we don't even know. I've never really been a fan of Jimmy Garoppolo, but as we've exited last season, we've seen that he's a cautionary quarterback, that he doesn't take the risk. Yes, he's accurate, but he's not that downfield thrower that we expected, that people thought they were going to get. So does Jimmy Garoppolo continue in San Francisco? I don't know. But the rest of the list that I didn't name, it's a wasteland. 20 of those guys disappeared into the ether. They never manifested. And that likely means that Drew Lock is going to fail. I mean, statistically speaking, if you're not Drew Brees and you might be Andy Dalton or you might be Derek Carr and you're probably not, you're probably one of the other two guys that you don't even know the names of, that I'm not even going to mention right now because they never worked out. It didn't happen. It never manifested. And that's likely what happens with Drew Lock. He doesn't make it in the league. And guess what? John Elway knows this. He knows this. So he spent an entire draft attempting to stink-proof Drew Lock. The entirety of this draft was meant to stink-proof Drew Lock. It's the equivalent of the guy at the gym who puts on 52 sprays of cologne to mask the body odor, and it still doesn't work. Because yet, even after signing Melvin Gordon as a free agent, which was a huge addition to this backfield, Elway still went out, drafted Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and Albert O. It's incredible. I mean, the amount of weapons that this team has. I mean, it's absurd. The list of offensive skill players in this offense is ridiculous. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant, Albert O, Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman. How is that possible? Isn't that like, it feels like an all-star team in a sense. Like, how many freak athletes? First off, Noah Fant, Albert O as tight ends. Good luck. That might be the most athletic duo of tight ends in the league. I don't even know if that's debatable, is it? Like, they certainly are. And then Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton on the outside, incredible. I can't believe they've done this and put this together. But I believe that John Elway knows that his quarterback situation is no good. And this is all a step for a much more grandiose move. He's got other plans in mind. He's setting up something totally different because John Elway is a big dreamer. And it doesn't stop here. So I don't believe he's putting weapons around Drew Lock, even though big media and online analysts and everybody wants you to believe that that's what it is. They believe in Drew Lock. Drew Lock's the answer in Denver. And John Elway went out and proved it by grabbing these assets. No, I don't believe that. I think that he is building an offense that is meant to entice a veteran to come chase a title in Denver. And this wouldn't be the first time that John Elway has done this, right? I mean, go to the history books. Certainly not the first time that John Elway has done this. Because when John Elway joined the Denver Broncos in 2011, his first front office position was director of player personnel. It's his first position he had. And exactly 2 seasons after the Denver Broncos drafted Tim Tebow in the first round of the NFL draft, John Elway showed up, took one look at his 46.5% completion percentage and said, fuck this. And he started making calls. He got on the phone because there was no way that John Elway, an elite quarterback of his time, was going to let Tim Tebow and a 46.5% completion percentage quarterback any team with any roster that he was going to build. And guess what? After he started making those calls, the reality was the allure at the time for playing with the Denver Broncos and John Elway wasn't just a starting job. Oh no, it was much more than that. Because at the time, John Elway had a top 2 offensive line in pass blocking. He had an 1,100-yard rusher in Willis McGahee. He had 2 young wide receivers in Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas. And he even, off to the side, has Julius Thomas, this athletic tight end that nobody knows anything about at this time. And the trap was set. And all he had to do was wait. And by 2012, he had talked to 36-year-old Peyton Manning, 1 year removed from neck surgery, into the starting job. And over the course of the 4 years he was there, he took the Broncos to 2 Super Bowls with 1 victory. And here we are almost 10 years later, and it feels like Groundhog's Day. And John Elway has his sights set again. And this time, I believe it is on Aaron Rodgers. I do. I truly believe that he is waiting for Aaron Rodgers. Because Rodgers wants out of Green Bay, and the Packers have reciprocated the feeling by drafting his replacement in Jordan Love. I mean, just listen to these post-Jordan Love Aaron Rodgers quotes. These are incredible. Here you go. Rodgers admitted Friday he was surprised and not thrilled by the pick necessarily, but he added, I understand. Right, he gets it. He understands how the game is played, how the organization works. But let's read on. Because as much as I feel confident in my abilities and what I can accomplish and what we can accomplish, there are some new factors that are out of my control. And so my sincere desire to start and finish with the same organization, just as it has with many other players over the years, may not be a reality at this point. Uh-oh. Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay. And Green Bay wouldn't have drafted a guy in the first round if they didn't have intentions of making this a reality. They knew this. This discussion has taken place in the background, whether it was arguments or debates or this negative energy. Somebody knew that a divorce was eventual. We remember this through Mike McCarthy, all this time. And here we go again. John frickin' Elway is staring down the barrel of a Hall of Fame quarterback who's on the outside looking in with plenty of gas left in the tank and all the weapons in the world to use as bait. Again. God damn you, John Elway. How do you do this? Because who believes that Aaron Rodgers wouldn't want to throw the ball to Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy? Right? I mean, who believes that Aaron Rodgers wouldn't love to turn around and hand the ball off to Melvin Gordon and watch him rip through the line? He's one of the best backs in the league who clearly has gas in the tank as well. But of course Aaron Rodgers wants these things. And the parallels between he and Peyton Manning over 8 years ago couldn't be more perfect. Almost identical ages, both set to be replaced by first-round picks. If you guys remember that when he had the neck surgery and the Colts went like 2-14, they were sitting on the first pick. Here comes Andrew Luck. And both with just one Super Bowl ring at the time and a clear-cut feeling of unfinished business and a belief that they can keep producing. So while some fantasy rankers have Jerry Jeudy slated as the wide receiver 8 or wide receiver 9 in the class, smart fantasy owners understand situations change. They understand that Jeudy and Sutton won't be hamstrung by limited passing volume and a wavering organizational confidence in their starting quarterback forever. Though many people believe that Drew Lock is going to be there forever and would roll their eyes at the idea that he's going to be replaced, I remember these same feelings about Tim Tebow, right? Tebow was once the answer in Denver. Let's listen to two parallel quotes from John Elway. 2011, John Elway talking about Tim Tebow. I'll try and do his voice. It would be absolutely wonderful if the Denver Broncos and Denver Bronco fans, if Tim Tebow could become that franchise guy. I don't know if that's his voice. Elway said, and believe me, we are all hopeful that he can be that guy. He's come in and won 4 of the past 5 games, and he's played well. Remember that. You're not always going to make great strides week in and week out because you have ups and downs. But what I want to emphasize is we're all hopeful Tim's the guy. I wish I had a crystal ball to be able to say that he absolutely is, or I don't want to say he's not because I don't believe that. But it's hard to say if Tim Tebow is absolutely that guy. We're very hopeful that he is. Wow, John. Wow. It's great. It's a great quote. Very, very inspiring if you're Tim Tebow, if you're a fan of the Broncos. But let's fast forward to Drew Lock this year prior to the draft. We believe he's got potential to do it, and we think he's just going to continue to get better and better, Elway said. But he's still in the learning process, and we know that he's going to have to get better. But we really liked what we saw. We really liked what we saw when he was on IR and how he tried to prepare himself and get ready to play when he had a chance to play. And then he came in and played very well. Won 4 of the last 5 games. We feel that he's that guy. Oh, it's classic. The 4 out of 5 games. Him and Tebow. All right. How could I have possibly found 2 quotes that are more similar? But damn it, John. Just say he's not the guy. Who are you kidding? Because the truth is that John Elway is playing for his job this year as well, right? The reality is that the Broncos haven't been good for a while. And Elway has been here for quite a few years now. The Peyton Manning era was a clear blessing to this team. The fact that they were able to pull him from the depths after a surgery and utilize him. And towards the end of his career, make it to multiple Super Bowls. Even when many of us remember Brock Osweiler and that fucking contract. But Brock Osweiler essentially helped them win that Super Bowl. If he didn't bridge that gap to help Peyton Manning buy time with that helium, just weak-ass arm throwing ducks down the field, they never would have won another Super Bowl. And John Elway understands that the heat is on him and the organization. They want results. He's had every opportunity to put players in place. They've had great defensive players, but they've been a bad team for a very long time. And this Drew Lock pick, even though to me, I don't think it's that bad, because the reality is that taking a quarterback early can be just as risky. I mean, look what happened with Mariota and Winston. Winston has been serviceable. He's actually been better than expected, even though he turns the ball over 1 billion times. But neither player has technically been a success at the NFL level. Look, they were drafted. I mean, you could take a guy early and still not hit on these players. So to take the chance on Drew Lock later, the same way Jalen Hurts was drafted this year, it's low risk. It's less draft capital. Technically, it's smarter. But for John Elway to have taken Drew Lock with no real plan, if it doesn't work out, that's where the negligence comes in. That's where the organization is like, what's going on here, John? We need results. And sure, he won 4 out of 5 games. And he had a big game on the road in Houston. And everybody talks about Drew Lock in Houston. That was the game. And it was incredible. Go look the stats up. Mind-bending. I mean, that's the reason people keep buying into it. And I get that he has a big arm. And I get that in college he had 44 touchdowns. And I get that every year that he was in the SEC playing ball at Missouri, his completion percentage went up and went up and went up. And just last year in 5 games, he had a 64% completion percentage. I get all these things. But that doesn't make him the answer. And he's not the answer. So for those of us that have Jerry Jeudy, and I've joked in jest that I'm going to rank Michael Pittman over Jerry Jeudy, but I can't all in good conscience do that because Jerry Jeudy is such a talented player and situations do change. The downside is that if Drew Lock stays here, the pass attempts don't necessarily rise. Again, I've brought up the fact that if you toggle between the attempts per game, between Drew Lock, between Joe Flacco, Drew Lock was actually throwing the ball less per game than Joe Flacco. And Joe Flacco is garbage. He's terrible. Why would they add more running back help when they've got Royce Freeman, who many of us still believe is a good player, but just somehow has been stuck in a timeshare with a undersized, undrafted free agent? And then they bring in Melvin Gordon, who's still got plenty left in the tank and is still a borderline elite rusher in this league and should do fine in this offense, who I believe ranked in the top 10 this year in run blocking. So there's a lot of reasons to love him. But John Elway, his ass is on the line this year, and he knows it. And it's all on Drew Lock. Because the Broncos have missed the playoffs for 4 straight years. And they've been on the outside of the top 22 in offensive points in that division, or in the league, I should say, for that same 4 years. So they're not scoring points. They're not making the playoffs. And now they're watching the sun get blotted out by Patrick Mahomes and the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And nothing puts more heat on an organization and on a GM than when another team in your own division is soaring sky high. Drafted a generational quarterback in Patrick Mahomes and is watching him torch defenses week over week over week over week, and all you can do is sit back and watch. And you look up at the standings and you just watch Kansas City rise and rise and rise and go to the top. Because how are the Broncos going to win this division? How are they going to pull this off? I mean, you know that the Kansas City Chiefs are at worst, a 12-4 team annually? Probably 13-3 as they get better. I just don't see it for Denver. So a change has to be made. It necessarily has to be made. And I will tell you this right now. If Drew Lock opens up the 2020 season with a handful of stink bomb performances, things are going to change very, very quickly. And don't be surprised when John Elway gets on the phone and pulls off one of the biggest blockbuster deals of 2020 and brings Aaron Rodgers to the Mile High State to rescue him in exactly the same way that Peyton Manning did almost a decade ago.